Watch this vidcast, or I'll gouge your eyes out.
Welcome back, horror hounds, to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast.
I'm Mike Ghostman Pickle.
And I'm James Rivera. We have a lot to discuss today, including some horror news, but before we get to that, we have some updates regarding our television series.
For the past couple of weeks, we haven't done any news because we've been doing the top 25 of 2000, of the 2000s, 2000 through 2009. And while we were doing that, we were working on productions and editing nonstop and getting the show going and preparing for our Halloween special, which we hope you watched it last night if you're listening to this on Saturday. Last night on October 25th was our first annual Halloween special, and it featured a short film that I'm very proud of, extended scare package. So it was a lot of fun, so I hope you guys checked it out, and if you didn't, then check out the rerun on Sunday at around the same time.
And we'll be posting in the description where and how to watch.
After the special, we're going to have like a 2 or 3 week hiatus while we prepare for the season finale coming up around Christmas. All right, it's been a while. Let's do this.
Horror show news.
All right, Nicholas Winding Refn is going to direct and serve as showrunner for the Maniac Cop TV series on HBO. Holy shit.
Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale arrives on digital and Hulu.
Director Adam Green is making Hatchet 5 and 6, according to Danielle Harris.
Sam Raimi to direct his first horror film since 2009's Drag Me to Hell.
And Zombieland Double Tap is a mild box office success.
Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse is opening nationwide this weekend.
Yes. I've been waiting to talk about this one. Nicholas Winding Refn is directing Maniac Cop, and he's also going to be the showrunner. That's already good news, and the fact that it's going to be on HBO is awesome news, too. The synopsis is, it's set in Los Angeles. Maniac Cop is told through a kaleidoscope of characters, from cop to common criminal. A killer in uniform has uncaged mayhem upon the streets. Paranoia leads to social disorder as a city wrestles with the mystery of the exterminator in blue. Is he mere mortal or a supernatural force? Nicholas Winding Refn said on Twitter, Maniac Cop will be my version of a cocaine-fueled, neon-soaked, bubblegum-wrapped, mayhem-infused, speed-driven universe of thrill-seekers who are consumed by ever-present struggle of good versus evil, but evil is winning. So William Lustig will also executive produce the Nicholas Winding Refn original series. I'm so excited about this.
For those who don't know, William Lustig is the director of the original Maniac Cop film, so the fact that he's on board just tells you how faithful this series is going to be to that vision. And I think it's a perfect fit for Nicholas Winding Refn because he loves to do stuff shot in LA. He loves neon. He loves corruption. He just did that show for Amazon with Miles Teller, Never Too Young to Die.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that yet.
Yeah, and after seeing Neon Demon, I'm really looking forward to something like this, to see where he goes with the gore and with the exploitation aspect of it.
It's going to be more slick gore than the original Maniac Cop, a little bit more glossy, is what I imagine, based on his style, based off films like The Neon Demon and Drive.
I'm sure it's going to be a little more serious and stylistic, and it seems like he's really going to go balls out with all the criminal element and mix with the cops.
Does this take place in the same universe as the Maniac Cop films?
I'm wondering. I haven't heard.
I don't know too many of the details regarding that, but I think that might be a wise decision just to set it in that universe. That way we have some sort of precedent for the audience to follow in on. I really love the original Maniac Cop films. William Lustig did a really good job on those movies. They're fun.
Yeah.
Always nice to have see Bruce Campbell in something. I wonder if Bruce Campbell's going to make an appearance in this.
Oh, that would be cool. To me, this just sounds like a recipe for success. Nicholas Winding Refn in something like Maniac Cop with William Lustig involved, and it's on HBO. I think it's a win-win.
So do I. So Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale arrives on digital and Hulu. So if you're listening, it arrived on video on demand yesterday, so you could check it out. And if you want to wait for Hulu, it'll be available on November 1st. So Jennifer Kent, for those who don't know, is the director of The Babadook, the cult horror film that made a big splash as part of the horror renaissance. The new film is a bit different. This is the synopsis. Claire, a young Irish convict, chases a British officer through the rugged Tasmanian wilderness and is bent on revenge for a terrible act of violence the man committed against her family. On the way, she enlists the services of an Aboriginal tracker, Billy, who is marked by trauma from his own violence-filled past. Accordingly, Jennifer Kent had a hard time shooting the movie and started crying due to the harsh depictions of rape and violence. She described it as heartbreaking to shoot, and some audiences in Australia where the film premiered and film festivals actually walked out because they thought it was too difficult to sit through. So this I would say this signals a different direction for Jennifer Kent, because while the Babadook was an atmospheric horror film, I wouldn't call it particularly disturbing, and it's not the type of film that would scare audiences away or having people walk out of it. The content isn't to that level or to that extreme.
Well, I hear that this isn't horror, though, right?
I know it has to do with rape. I know there's a harsh depiction of rape, from what I understand, more than once, and how violence affects somebody and what it does to the soul. So in a way, it may not be horror in the traditional sense, but it's definitely horrifying real-life situations. This sounds like a completely different style of film for Jennifer Kent.
Yeah, this seems to happen with these directors that are coming up now and making these really strong debut films. They seem to go in the crazy direction with their second film.
More experimental. We saw it with Jordan Peele going from a simplistic movie like Get Out. Not simplistic, I just mean a more traditional narrative film like Get Out.
Yeah.
And then trying to do something a little bit more balls out and ambitious with Us. It's happened with Ari Aster doing Hereditary, which is more in the mold of a traditional horror film, even though it's expertly made and one of the best. Going on to Midsommar, which is much more experimental and less mainstream friendly. And of course, Robert Eggers, who did The Witch, which, while also my favorite horror film of the decade, follows a little bit more of a traditional narrative of a horror film, and his second film is balls out experimentation.
Yeah.
So I see a trend with a lot of these new rising horror auteurs that once they get their feet wet, they really try to go all out for a second feature. They don't hold back on their ambition or anything. So that's something to admire.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really good directors out there doing horror films that are fun to watch and fun to follow their career, and Jennifer Kent is definitely going to be one of them.
Yes. It even happens with, I know we had negatively reviewed this film on the podcast. It happened with It Follows.
Yeah.
Director followed it up with Under the Silver Lake, which is a lot more experimental and balls out, where It Follows, while being really well made, is closer to a straight traditional narrative. So it's a trend. It's definitely a trend. The formula may not always work, but you have to admire that these filmmakers, once they get their one chance, they really don't hold back and take some real career risks in their sophomore films.
Yeah, those are the directors I root for. Even though I didn't like Under the Silver Lake, I'm still rooting for him to do another good one. All right, that brings us to Adam Green, another great director. He's supposed to come out with Hatchet 5 and 6, and Danielle Harris confirmed this news at Monster Mania this year, and the films are reportedly being shot back-to-back.
Like Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I hate to admit this, I have not seen the fourth one, which was Victor Crowley, correct?
Yeah.
I like the first one. I love the second one. I wasn't big on the third one, and I haven't seen the fourth one, so I have to see Victor Crowley before I see Hatchet 5 and 6.
See, I actually liked Hatchet 3 quite a bit more than I did Victor Crowley.
Oh, okay.
I also liked Hatchet 3 better than I did the first one.
But not better than the second one, though,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
I think the second one is my favorite so far, then the third, then the second, then Victor Crowley. Mostly because Victor Crowley was really well made, had a lot of cool kills, it looked really good. Just more of the same, which I didn't expect from Adam Green. I expected him to go farther with it, which I'm sure, since he's doing 2 more Hatchet films back to back, I'm sure he has a really cool idea to take it to new places.
Well, we're rooting for you, Adam Green.
Yeah, but I'll watch anything that Danielle Harris is in, and I'll watch anything that Adam Green does. But I really hope he does more films like Frozen, because I think Frozen is better than any of the Hatchet films or anything else he's done.
Actually, yeah, I have to agree with that. Frozen was very, very surprising because I didn't expect to come from the director of the Hatchet films. And while I enjoyed Hatchet, I enjoy it on a different level than I do a film like Frozen. With the Hatchet, I just have a blast with them because they're the type of slasher movies that I like, just the balls out fun and gore. Frozen had more realism to it. It had more emotional layers. Yeah. I think it has more cinematic value behind it, more ambition, and more depth to the story.
And from hearing Adam Green talk, that's his goal as a director, is to do more films like Frozen. But he does the Hatchet films because it's fun and it's fan service. The fans love the Hatchet films.
Well, it's good for an artist to explore different sides of their personality, the serious side and the more fun side. So yeah. I don't begrudge him because I enjoy the Hatchet film, so I don't begrudge him going back and forth. But I would like to see another one like Frozen because that one really impressed me.
You're listening to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show Podcast.
Sam Raimi to direct the first horror film in a decade. He has not made a horror movie since Drag Me to Hell. I love the Spider-Man movies, but outside of that, all of Sam Raimi's best work has been in horror because of his Evil Dead trilogy and Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah, he's been producing the hell out of horror, but not directing
with his Ghost House Pictures. He'll be directing it. It's an untitled film from Columbia Pictures. It is being written by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift, the writers of Freddy vs. Jason, yay, and Friday the 13th, 2009, nay. Plot details are being kept under wraps, but it's being described as Misery meets Castaway, which, that sounds like an intriguing premise. Raimi said, I am thrilled to be reunited with Columbia Pictures. Of course, he did the Spider-Man films with them.
Yeah.
He also said, I have been a fan of Shannon and Swift, and we have found the perfect adventure to share with the world. Anytime Sam Raimi directs a horror movie, which is all too rare these days, I'm there. So regardless of who wrote it, who's behind it, who's producing it, this was always going to be something that I was going to check out very excitedly. I have no idea what type of horror movie this is going to go. I love Misery. I'm not a big fan of Castaway, but that's for another conversation. Yeah. However, the mixing of the two premises, I think, shows a lot of potential for some dynamite storytelling.
Well, I can only hope that the great Sam Raimi would not direct another horror film unless the script was really strong.
I don't think he would either, because he does it. He hardly does it anymore.
And I think that Freddy vs. Jason was stronger than it was given credit for. I thought it was a pretty good movie. A lot of crowd-pleasing type of stuff.
I think a lot of people went into that film with weird expectations. They expected some kind of hardcore horror movie where I'm like, It's Freddy vs. Jason. Come on. What do you expect? And for what it's supposed to be, I think that movie's a blast. I watch it almost every year around Halloween, and it's always funny. It's always entertaining. Granted that there are higher quality Nightmare on Elm Street films than that. There are horror films that are scarier.
Yeah.
I don't think it aims to be the most frightening horror film. I think it aims to be an exciting mashup for fans of two different iconic horror franchises that they always wanted to see bleed together.
Yeah,
and it always gets judged by weird standards.
Yeah, I think it's a good representation of both films.
I agree.
And it's fairly well written, but I'm kind of worried that they wrote the Friday the 13th remake in 2009 because that was like embarrassingly bad. The characters were unbelievable. They had a lot of stupid lines, so hopefully that they went back to more like Freddy vs. Jason.
Well, one thing that I do hope they carry over from the Friday the 13th remake is the kills, the level of gore, the brutality.
Yes, the kills.
Because if you'd isolate all those scenes, those are as good as any slasher film kills I've ever seen.
Yeah. Okay, next up we have Zombieland Double Tap, which I have yet to see, sadly. I really want to see it. I hear it's really funny. It was originally projected to make $23 million on its opening weekend, but it made 26, so a bit more than it was projected to.
It looks like it's not setting the box office on fire, but from what I understand, it's a mild success, and it's going to end up making the studio a profit in the end. And they're talking about doing another Zombieland spin-off, so it's apparently doing well enough to warrant another sequel. I haven't seen the new one, so I can't comment on it. I hope to see it within the upcoming week, sometime within the upcoming weeks. A lot of movies to catch.
From what I hear, there's not much more to see here with the horror, but I heard it's a really good comedy. So I'm fine with that because I love the cast.
So lastly, Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse is opening nationwide this weekend. Mike and I are going to review this on next week's podcast. This is a massive event for the horror community.
Yeah.
Because it's the follow-up to The Witch, one of the fucking greatest horror films of all time, in my opinion, and one of the true highlights of the past decade of horror cinema.
Yeah.
I actually went to go see it last week. Before it opened up nationwide when it was in its limited run. I'm not going to discuss it right now because I need to see it one more time and gather my thoughts. I will say this. What I saw was brilliant, original, unprecedented, and a work of true vision. I'm still trying to process how I feel about it, though.
Yeah, I've already
Powerful stuff. Powerful.
I'm already seeing from many people that it's a new masterpiece. And I'm also seeing from a couple stragglers here and there that it's a piece of shit. So it tells me
it's not
awesome.
a piece of shit by any means. I would say I think it's a masterpiece. The only thing with the film is that it's such a bewildering experience that it demands more than one viewing for you to have a clear understanding and to have a clear ideas about what you think of it. It's something that I could tell as the more you watch it, the more it's going to reveal itself to you. It's not the type of movie that you can walk in on one viewing and just have everything figured out and be completely satisfied. It's a film that has layers, a lot of mystery, and because it's so different and original, when you're watching it, you might be enjoying it, but you have a hard time explaining why you're enjoying it or what's going on sometimes. But by the end, I feel the vision all comes together. I'm going to see it one more time just because I don't feel comfortable really dissecting it at this point. It really demands multiple viewings. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Yes, sadly I haven't seen it yet. I really wanted to see it last week, but I just got too busy. But I definitely plan on seeing it this coming week and talking about it next week.
Yes, so we will be reviewing The Lighthouse next week on the podcast. Tune in for that.
Listen to this podcast, or I'll stab your eardrums with an ice pick.
That brings us to the stuff we watched over the past couple weeks. We're going to start with
some television.
The television that we watched. But first of all, I just want to mention something that I rewatched again that we just talked about a couple weeks ago. I showed The Three from Hell to my son, Darian. He absolutely loved it. He had a lot of fun with it. I liked it even more the second time. My wife woke up the next morning after we rented it, and my son loved it so much he wanted to show it to her. So he watched it again, and I watched it again for the third time, and my wife loved it. This is going to be another classic. A lot of people are hating on this. I think they're not going to realize how awesome it is till like 10 years down the line. But it gets better with each viewing, and I can tell that this is one that's going to be like Devil's Rejects, where I watch it tons of times.
See, I already loved it, and I already know I'm pretty sure it's going to be in my top 10 horror films at the end of the year, possibly in the top 5.
Yeah,
and this is only based on one viewing. I'm going to buy the Blu-ray sometime this week because I need to watch it again. But I can tell it's a film that the more you see it, the more it grows on you. Because kind of like Devil's Rejects. Like, I love Devil's Rejects instantly, but the more I watch it over the years, the greater my appreciation grows for it. And fuck, we've talked about these movies so much on the podcast at this point, but I fucking love the world that Rob Zombie created with the Firefly Flam. God damn it. Keep messing up my words. The Firefly family.
Yeah.
All right, enunciate, James, enunciate.
And after I watched Three from Hell for the third time, it solidified my opinion that I need another one. I need another one of these movies with the Fireflies.
Yes. Do it, Rob Zombie.
Yes.
We're waiting.
All right, so we're gonna first of all we're gonna discuss. We're both caught up on American Horror Story. How are you enjoying it? 1984.
Oh man, I love this season. I think there might have been seasons with a little bit more, I don't know, depth or complexity to them, or stuff that was more challenging. But as a pure blast of fun, this is the most joyful season of American Horror Story that's ever come on so far.
Yeah.
It totally revels in the slasher iconography. It does what you said we did. When we first discussed the pilot episode a few episodes back, not the pilot episode, but the debut episode of the season on the podcast, we talked about how it starts off as a traditional slasher, but knowing American Horror Story, they're going to push it in different directions that go outside the realm of the slasher. And they've actually done that. But they did it without compromising or making it feel like less of a slasher movie. They did it without making you feel like they shifted genres. I'm really impressed what they're doing. I like the twist at the end of the last episode. I like where it's going because now it's going to pick up in a different time.
Yeah.
And the imagery is going to be different. Now we're going to finally see all the imagery from the trailers because the whole season's been filmed in dark at night in a camp so far. And now it's opening up to a wider world, and we're not going to spoil why it is. So you're going to see more different types of 80s imagery, beach bodies running around while killers jump out of the ocean and attack, not the ocean, the lake, and attack people. And I'm having fun with it. It's the most youthful season of American Horror Story so far. All their young casts, and I think it totally captures what makes slasher movies fun while adding a lot to their legacy at the same time. So I'm fucking having a blast with this season of American Horror Story. I know not everyone else is, but I can only speak for myself.
Yeah, for me with the first episode, it was like really solid, but okay, this is a tribute to slashers. Second episode, yeah, this is more tribute to slashers, more of the same that we've seen before, but it's getting a little weird. And then third or fourth episode, holy shit, it goes batshit. I knew it was going to do that. I knew they were going to do a little setup for a couple episodes, and then holy shit.
But even though it goes batshit, it doesn't feel like it's flying into different directions. Like sometimes when American Horror Story starts going off, it starts to feel like, at its worst, it starts to feel like it's starting to lose focus on what the season was.
Yeah.
This one feels like Ryan Murphy knows exactly what he's doing with these twists. The only thing I question, and it's just mildly, just because it's a show, it's art, I know it's not real, is the mythologizing of Richard Ramirez.
Yeah.
You'll know what you mean when I see it. I was like, the guy was a sick piece of shit, and they're making him look almost cool, or imbuing him with power, so I imagine that's not going to sit well with everybody, and there's a couple times I'm like, why are they doing this with Richard Ramirez? But whatever. It's not enough to be a deal breaker to offend me personally, but I could get why that might be a turn off to a couple of people.
Yeah, and at this point in the season, I'm loving it because it's going batshit, and everyone's a killer. Everyone has an ulterior motive. The killer's not a killer, but now he is, and now he's teamed with the Night Stalker, and there's tons of flashbacks to show everybody's ulterior motives. I'm just loving it.
But it still has maintained the tone of an 80s slasher flick, but with a lot more complexity in the plot and character emotions. I think that's its biggest contribution. It takes the simplistic formula of the slasher film and messes it up by making it more complicated, because most of the slasher films, it's always the standard issue victims, the dumbass teens smoking pot, drinking, getting laid, and then they get filleted and they get what's coming to them. This time, it's a little bit more than that. Everybody has a past. Everybody is running away from something.
Still a lot of fun.
But still a lot of fun. It still feels like a slasher series. Emma Roberts is doing really good this time as the lead. I'm really impressed with her. I think everybody in the cast is really good. I have no complaints so far. No complaints this season.
Yeah, it's really going in really cool directions. I'm loving it.
Me too.
The next thing I watched, I caught up on Creepshow.
I need to catch up on that.
For me, it just gets better with each one. Episode 1 was good, solid, but I had some problems with it. Episode 2 is even better than that, and Episode 3 was the best so far. And then Episode 4 was almost better than 3, but not quite.
But you see the steady progression of quality as the series goes along.
Yes, definitely. And Episode 3, All Hallows Eve, was a really good one with the dead trick-or-treaters terrorizing the neighborhood.
Just in time for Halloween.
That was pretty awesome. And the man in the suitcase, it's the guy that was folded up in the suitcase, and every time he felt pain, he spit out gold coins. And this guy kept fucking torturing the poor guy to get gold.
It's also breaking records for Shudder for views. Like, it's breaking their viewership records. It's really streaming very well, and it seems like it's a big success for Shudder right now. Their biggest success for original content on their platform.
And I must say, I'm liking them holding back their episodes one at a time.
It's more satisfying that way to see it build up over the weeks, because I love binge watching television.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about the traditional mode of television that makes you watch every week, like we've been doing with American Horror Story.
Yeah.
It allows each episode to swim in your head longer, and it makes everything linger. You could soak up more details when they release it a week at a time, and it gives you something to look forward to every week.
Yeah, and while Episode 4 wasn't quite as strong as 3, it was still pretty strong. The first one was The Companion, about a really lonely man who brings a scarecrow back to life, but it also deals with a young boy who deals with his asshole brother, who then has to deal with the scarecrow as well. So that kind of got a little convoluted, got a little too familiar, but still really strong short. And then Lydia Lane's Better Half was the other one, and that was really good, about a female exec who kills her lover, a lesbian lover, and then gets stuck in an elevator with her dead body. So that was a really good one. So Creepshow is hanging in there with a really strong season, getting better with each episode.
Hell yeah. Congratulations, Greg Nicotero, on your success. I mean, it's doing fucking fantastic work.
Yes, I love
fantastic ratings.
The comic bookish elements of it. I love the mixture of the stories. I love the mixture with the traditional with some little freshness thrown in. So another series that is not disappointing.
So now you're going to talk about another Greg Nicotero series that's not quite as fresh.
Shut up.
Yes, if you've been listening to the episode to the podcast, You've seen my ups and downs with The Walking Dead. When we first started the podcast, I
quit after the first few seasons. Sorry. So
Yeah.
Mike will keep you updated.
We first started the podcast. I was defending it from week to week. I was still loving it. And then all of a sudden last season, it just fell apart for me. And by the end, I didn't even want to watch it anymore. But I was like, just to discuss it on the podcast, I'm going to try it again this season, see how it's going. Episode 1, doing good. Not blowing me away, but it made me want to watch episode 2.
Just enough to keep you hanging on then.
Yeah. Episode 2 is a little bit too much of concentrating on one group of characters. There's too many characters in this for you to be concentrating too much on one. So that was a little weaker for me, but it still held my interest and it still made me want to watch the next week, and I'm glad I did. Holy shit, episode 3 was fucking awesome. It's the best it's been in years.
I keep hearing that from a lot of people, saying that it's better than it's been in a very long time.
Yeah, this one was called Ghosts. It was written by Jim Barnes, his first episode. You guys give this guy more episodes to write, and give David Boyd more episodes. This is his 10th episode that he's directed. It's a great culmination of the episode 1 and 2. A couple genuine edge-of-my-seat moments where I literally got up out of my chair and I went to the front of the TV to see
So
what
it
was
recalls
going to happen.
The Walking Dead's glory days.
Yes. One of the strongest characters, they're really concentrating on her, Carol. Her hallucinations in this episode were creative and scary. They were thrown in at just the right moments. And it's a compelling story where she wants revenge for her son because her son's head was put on a spike. I hope you guys aren't behind on The Walking Dead because you're getting spoiler alerts now. She wants revenge for her dead son whose head was put on a spike last season. And the character interaction between everyone is compelling. There's equal time with all the best characters. There's exciting story twists. Some of Negan's best scenes since he was a bad guy. And there's a really cool thing with the endless...
Since he was a bad guy.
Yeah. Okay. And there's an endless zombie horde that's really making it interesting because this season, satellite dropped out of the sky. I knew things like this were going to start shaking up the world. So a satellite drops out of the sky, so it causes a fire in the woods. So this brings thousands of zombies from all over the area. So they're kind of constantly bombarding. So you see the beginning of the episode, all the characters just exhausting themselves, going 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours with this constant onslaught of the zombies, plus the whispers come in. Man, I hope it stays at this level because I'm completely back on board with The Walking Dead after one episode.
And you also watched another show, didn't you, Mr. Michael?
Yeah, I watched tons of TV over the last couple of weeks because I've been so busy. Every time I sat down, I was either too tired or didn't have time to watch a movie, so I just throw on TV. And one of those things, I'm back on board with Ghost Adventures. Amazingly, Ghost Adventures is 256 episodes in. Cannot believe how long running this show is. For good reason. It's a really good fucking show. I don't care if you believe in ghosts or not. The stories are compelling, and Zach is just fun to watch, and his little crew of guys, especially Aaron, because he gets the shit scared out of him almost every time. I kind of dropped off a little bit. I stopped watching it for a while because I'm up to season 16 of 18 seasons now. And when I got to around season 13, 14, I don't know, it seemed to kind of go off the rails a little bit. The guys weren't taking it as seriously. They were goofing off a lot, and there's nothing wrong with goofing off. I do like to see them goof off, but it seemed to be there was less happening at the places they went to. There was more of them goofing off than actually getting some compelling evidence. And they came back with these last few seasons. They're taking it more seriously. They're going to better places, more things where they go to places where it's exclusive that only they can go because of their reputation. They work with several demonologists, inventors, mediums, and people that are respected in the medium of parapsychology. It's getting better and better for me. The last few episodes I've seen, they went to Ripley's Believe It or Not in Hollywood. They were in there and they got this mummy foot that's on display there. And Zach had it in his hand, and they have this contraption that picks up anomalies in there and picks up patterns. And when you see an apparition appear, it has dots, points where you see a head, arms, and legs. And then they went to the alley. It's a recording studio in Los Angeles. They went upstairs where the owner was recently pushed down the stairs and killed. And some people believe that it was the ghosts in there that killed him. So they went upstairs where this owner used to let derelicts and all the musicians that would come through there, they would go up there and shoot heroin and shit. So they went to go up those stairs, and you hear very clearly through their recorder a woman's voice said, "You got a password?" Like saying, "Oh, you don't belong up here. We're up here doing drugs, you know." And then they got up there, and there was a bunch of female voices were all around the guy that stepped upstairs, and he said, "I'm horny," and one of them says like he's a donkey and shit like that, like saying he's got a big dick or something. So it was like all these ghosts flirting with him. That was so really, really cool shit.
You're listening to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show Podcast.
So Mike and I were resistant to the idea of a Child's Play remake. I had very specific reasons for being resistant to it. One, I'm very loyal to that franchise. Of what Don Mancini has been doing with it, I'm a very big fan. I didn't like that they stepped on him creatively to get this movie made, and it's probably going to given him a few extra hurdles to get his series off the ground.
Yeah.
For one, it was going to be called Child's Play. Now it has to be called Chucky to avoid confusion with the Child's Play reboot that they just pulled. Orion Pictures just pulled out. So I finally caught up with it after being resistant for so long. And funny enough, I was pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's a great horror movie, but it's fun. It's not Chucky, for one thing. Let's be very clear about this. This is not Chucky, or this is not Child's Play. So if you're looking for Charles Lee Ray and the serial killer possessing a doll using voodoo, this is a far cry from it. For one, Chucky has no soul in this. He's not a human being.
Yeah.
He's an AI that was manufactured in a certain way where his learning abilities were uninhibited, so he can gravitate towards violence. He can learn violence, foul language, bad behavior, and he soaks it up like a sponge. I actually enjoyed the movie on a few different levels. One, if you remove the fact that it's not Chucky, I think it's a credible threat as a doll, because I feel like technology is not too far from creating a doll like that. It almost functions like an Alexa, and it can tap into different electronics and different forms of technology. And that in itself is scary, because Chucky, for one, is just a doll, and you can get away from him. He doesn't have power to work anything around you. This one can turn TVs on, can get the lawnmower going, anything that's like electric. So that kind of broadens the possibilities of what this version of Chucky can do. I like Mark Hamill's voice work. I think he did a really good job. I think the gore in it was actually pretty good. The kill scenes were pretty effective. It looked like all practical, right? Didn't it?
Yeah, from what I've seen, I don't recall seeing any glaring CGI shots.
No, I don't either. I mean, if there was, it was probably minimally used. I really liked Aubrey Plaza in this.
She was really good.
And when I was resistant to the movie starting off, she was what pulled me in. It's just her presence, her power, her beauty, her sarcasm, everything about her. I always love to see me some Aubrey Plaza, and it almost feels like this role was written for her.
Yeah.
She plays the character of Andy's mom, although she's quite a bit different. She's a little bit more snarky, a little bit more sarcastic, even a little bit more likable, a little bit more relatable, I would say. And you have Brian Tyree Smith from Atlanta, and who's also in The Joker right now.
Yeah.
I think he did a really good job. What do you think?
Yeah, he was good, and Gabriel Bateman was really good as Andy. I think that was one of the best parts of the movie. Such a good little actor.
I thought there was some humorous moments sprinkled throughout. Some of the humor was a little off. It didn't work. I felt like the Chucky aspect where he named him Chucky. He didn't name him Chucky. The doll chose the name Chucky was a little bit unbelievable. The kid wanted to call the doll Han Solo, and these are buddy dolls. They're called buddy dolls. They almost remind me a little bit of iPhone technology or Alexas. You can name them whatever you want, and they're designed to respond to whatever name you give them. And he named him Han Solo, and he's like, I like Chucky. Let's go with that. I'm like, what?
That was
no.
eye roll right there.
Eye roll right there. There was no reason to do that. Another problem I have with it is the doll is fucking hideous. And I don't mean that in a scary way. It's hideous in a way where I have a hard time believing anybody would buy those dolls, that they would be ready for mass consumption, and they would be blockbuster toys that a bunch of kids would want. They're fucking ugly. I don't see any kid wanting that. I can picture a kid wanting a doll like that, or see the appeal of it, especially with the technology and what it's capable of doing, just not one that looks that hideous.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed it. It's not too long, which is another thing. It breezes by. So if there are any flaws that the movie has, it goes by so quick like a shot that it kind of bulldozers over them for the most part. And the cast is solid. I like the young kid who played Andy. I thought he was really good. I really enjoyed the cast. I thought it was a pretty enjoyable movie. Funny, gory, breezes by. Nice little Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 homage. I think people watching it, they should have named it something different, but then again, they were never going to name it something different because they wouldn't have that IP. They wouldn't be able to market it in the same way.
Yeah.
But I think you told me something recently. If they called it Child's Play AI, that might have actually fixed a lot of it, because you could think of it as a reimagined version of the Child's Play universe using artificial intelligence. And on that level, I think it's a good movie.
Well, it's competently directed by Lars Klevberg. He's a fairly new director. He just directed Polaroid, that also came out this year. I've heard good and bad things about it. I'm not sure why it said based on characters by Don Mancini, because it didn't seem like it was based on his characters at all.
Well, Andy and the mom, I guess, on some very tangential level, it's connected to Child's Play. It's not the type of Chucky that would have worked in the 80s or 90s or even in the early 2000s. It's very much now. It feels like a millennial film.
It didn't start off well for me. It was a mixed bag for me overall. It didn't start well because it opens up with a commercial for the doll, and it's an ugly ass doll, and it's
that made me laugh because the doll was hideous. I was like, what the fuck?
And it's starting out with a commercial called to the fact that it looks and feels artificial. It feels like an artificial movie to me, a lot of it. But the Andy character was awesome. Aubrey Plaza was awesome in it. And the doll gets uglier when it gets more evil.
But it's kind of funny in certain parts when he uses it to...
Instead of being scary, it just turns uglier, and he has all these ugly expressions. And him naming himself Chucky was cringeworthy. But Chucky pestering Andy was pretty funny.
It was.
When Andy was trying to sleep and Chucky couldn't sleep because he's an AI, he never goes to sleep, so he's constantly bugging him all night, asking him dumb questions.
And it's the right mixture of funny and creepy, because the scene where Andy is trying to go to sleep in his room and Chucky is just standing right there, right next to him at the bed with his fucking eyes open and that hideous face saying, "Would you like me to sing the bedtime song again?" No. And Andy starts getting freaked out. "Could you please close your eyes or stop trying to look so weird?" Another significant change is that he wears a hearing aid, and I guess it gives him a little bit more of a struggle. You get the sense that this family is not living too well.
Yeah.
Him and his mom, that they're just struggling to get by and that they love each other. And I felt that the relationship between Aubrey Plaza and her son was believable.
Yeah.
I liked all the stuff with Brian Tyree Smith and his mother, who plays another interesting character down the hall. There's another little homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and a funny sight gag that involves a watermelon.
Well, it's not really an homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. They actually showed a scene from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2,
then he copied it.
Which is part of the scene that I like the most is when Andy asked Chucky to be mean to scare the mom's boyfriend. And I did like that he showed him Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but I had mixed feelings about that because, he showed him the movie, but the movie was also showing you that, see, when people see scary movies, makes them imitate them.
I don't think
came off that way to me.
I don't think it comes off that way at all, because Chucky's an artificial AI in this version, or Buddy. I'd rather call him Buddy. I don't want to call him Chucky, because
they're actually a little heavy-handed. Not only is it clear that they're trying to say that, it's a little. I don't think so. It's a little heavy-handed with it.
I don't think so at all. For one, it's an AI that doesn't have a moral compass. It doesn't comprehend things the way that humans can. And I think it's more in the traditional sci-fi narrative where AIs get out of control, which is nothing new. Because they don't possess a moral compass to understand the difference between right and wrong.
But it also
because obviously it doesn't affect Andy and his friends that way. It affects the way that most people who watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So I don't see that, just for one, as Chucky is not human, and I think the point is that AIs uninhibited, without the ability and without the background of a human being, the memories that they have, the experiences they have, the idea of a soul.
But they also talk about how that is similar to a human. They talk about the similarities between AI learning and it being human, and they talk about society and stuff. So some of the commentary in it just showed me that was just a heavy-handed message. They were trying to drive home that horror films cause people to commit violence.
I don't think so at all.
The creepy neighbor twist was.
Oh,
decent.
I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
And I really,
You got the feeling right from the beginning, though, that there was something off, that he was going to play more of a part in the horror than the movie was letting on, because it was very subtle just by the way that he would stare at everybody a little bit too long.
Yeah.
He would linger a little bit too much, where, like, it's enough that it could fly over your head, but something in your brain registers that there's something very off with that creepy neighbor who is the janitor of the apartment complex that they live in.
Yeah. It also did good showing that Chucky was portraying Andy as a lunatic. I thought that was very well done. Oh, and the department store buddy, where it was the big giant, it was the guy in a big giant buddy suit.
Oh, that scene was awesome. Don't ruin it, but that scene was awesome.
Oh, that was one of the greatest. It was involving kids and a lot of blood.
And I like Mark Hamill's voice work, which didn't really surprise me. I expected him to do a good job.
And even though there was quite a few things in there that I liked about it, there was actually ended up being more that I didn't like. Brian Tyree Smith, he was a really good character, and not only did they waste him in a horrible way, they also wasted his character. His character kind of had a good contribution to the movie, and then it kind of fizzled out. He meant nothing by the end. Nice build up to the climax. Seemed like it was gonna be a good ending. But the ending was really hokey, and then they sold the buddy song too much. It's a decent movie. It was
more enjoyable than either of us anticipated, though. Regardless,
pretty fun movie, just kind of lame.
Okay, I think I liked it more than you did, though.
Listen to this podcast, or I'll gut you.
I watched another brand new horror film that is on Netflix right now. It is called In the Tall Grass. It's directed by Vincenzo Natali, and it is based on a short story from Stephen King and Joe Hill. Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, who's carved a name out for himself. And overall, I really enjoyed the movie. I think it's a little bit drawn out. The concept of the film is about this area of tall grass, and we've all seen them. It looks like a farm area where you go into, as soon as you enter, time starts splitting apart in different directions and going on at different times. So if you might enter with someone, if you lose track of them, if you don't keep them close by, they could end up in a different time zone than you are. Oh. And the field keeps shifting them around, so it's hard for these characters to connect back up. There's a lot of creepy mystery in it. I think it's exceptionally well shot. Just the cinematography is beautiful, and some of it... some people might scoff at this, but some of the cinematography remind me of like a Terrence Malick film. The way that it shows nature, the close-ups. The best part of the movie was Patrick Wilson.
Oh, I didn't even realize he was in it.
Oh yeah, he's really good in this movie. He's kind of an intimidating character, and he makes for a good villain. And other than Hard Candy and Aquaman, so he has, but never mind. Regardless, I typically associate Patrick Wilson with being kind of a good guy, or maybe that's because I'm thinking of The Conjuring and of Watchmen. So I typically more associate him with being a good guy in movies, but I found him to be a very compelling villain. I thought the premise was really interesting. However, it's a little bit drawn out, and I could tell that it was based on a short story.
That's what I keep hearing.
And even though it's good, it's good, the further it goes along, you get the sense that they're stretching this out to fill a full runtime, and the movie actually runs for an hour and 42 minutes. They could have cut 20 minutes out of it or something and made it like an 80-minute film, and it would have been better, especially since it revolves around so much mystery, and it pulls you deeper into a mystery that it has no intentions of resolving, which is fine because I like movies that are an experience. I like the ambiguity, and I don't need everything spelled out to me. I can handle a film where inexplicable events are taking place that never happened. Sometimes when you build it up like it's building up to a conclusion, and then it doesn't arrive, is a little bit misleading. So if they were going to do that, they didn't have to draw it like, we're going to explain to you what's going on, you're going to know. In the end, you still don't know what was going on in that field, and you're not sure. And that's kind of why it gets a little bit drawn out at the end. But it's not a bad movie. I did enjoy it, and I thought the concept was pretty cool. I thought it was good cinematography, solid acting, especially from Patrick Wilson.
If I don't know he was in it, I probably would have watched it already.
Oh yeah.
Because I haven't had a good experience with a couple of Stephen King, Joe Hill things. One of them was the Nosferatu. I watched a couple episodes of that, and I kind of lost interest. And I watched a couple episodes of Castle Rock, and I kind of lost interest. But I got to pick up on both of those again. Both of those series do the same thing that you say In the Tall Grass was doing, a little bit too much, dragging out the story that could have been told in a shorter time.
I'm not really familiar with Joe Hill as a writer, but I've heard from a lot of very credible sources that he's an even better writer than Stephen King. And it's weird because even though I feel the film is drawn out, I could see how as a piece of literature, this might actually work more. And for one, it's trippier than most Stephen King movies or concepts are. So I'm guessing that's where the Joe Hill aspect comes in. I mean, again, I'm not sure, but I can see some of the King's humanity in there. Overall, on balance, I liked it more than I didn't because some of the stuff it does really well. So that's my thoughts on In the Tall Grass, streaming on Netflix right now.
So I watched The Furies, written and directed by Tony Diacchino. And good film, not great. It's an Australian film about a woman who's kidnapped and left in the woods, and she's hunted by masked men. It's a familiar premise that's been done before, including The Hunt, which just got pulled from theaters. And it stars Airlie Dodds, a pretty good performance by her. And it's a fairly big budget for a film like this, which is just like a balls-out action slasher. It's a $7 million budget. It's great practical effects, including a hatchet to the face scene, where this killer, you just meet this character, and she's compelling, she's fun to watch, so you think, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of the movie with this character. And then the killer catches her, and he puts a hatchet up against her face. It's like, holy shit, somebody's going to save her or something. And then he kind of just pushes it into her face. Her skin starts getting all bunched up and pushing to the side and clumping up, and then he just pushes her face off with the hatchet. Ugh. Awesome.
I wasn't going to say this till after, but I had to confess I actually watched half of The Furies and I didn't finish it.
Yeah.
I did see that scene, and it was quite the kill. I don't think I've seen movies or a lot of horror movies where people take someone's face off.
Yeah.
Or they cut it open, but I've never seen it done like that.
Yeah, and this film would have kind of been dumb and a little too, I guess, it seems disingenuous. It seems fake. It seems staged, much like the Child's Play did for me. But this one is even worse than that. But still, such great kills and good action and great practical effects. And then when the twist comes about at the end, you feel that maybe it comes off as fake for a reason.
Okay. I need to finish the movie.
Yeah.
See, what you're describing it's not my problem with it. It's not like a bad film. But I made the mistake of putting this on as soon as I got home from watching The Lighthouse.
Oh.
Which, as a piece of filmmaking, is an astonishing work of art. And it was so rattling around in my brain what I had just witnessed and the imagery of it that watching The Furies right after that, it was hard for that movie to keep my attention, even though I liked a couple of the kills.
Yeah, it must have came up as so cheap.
Yeah, and after watching The Lighthouse, it probably wasn't the best idea. And I was aware while I was watching it that I wasn't enjoying it on the level it's supposed to be enjoyed on just because of what I got out of. So that's the reason I turned it off at the halfway point, because I don't feel in the state of mind that I was in after watching The Lighthouse I could have given that movie its proper respect or its proper due. So I actually want to go back and start it over and rewatch the whole thing, because like I said, it wasn't bad, but it was just not right for the frame of mind I was watching it. And if I had finished it, I would have saw it in a way that I probably shouldn't have watched it. That makes sense.
Yeah. It seemed fake and staged, but I couldn't deny that it was exciting action and just those. It's worth a watch just for those kills. And then, like I said, the director might have meant for it to look staged by the time you see the twist. I won't give it away, but
it is practical effects though.
Yeah, so
which is always admirable.
Yeah, that's always good to watch something with practical effects and support and show these studios that horror fans appreciate special effects.
Yes, Shudder's showing it.
Yes, and not.
So this is also a Shudder exclusive for anyone out there who doesn't know. So if you got the Shudder streaming app,
yeah, Shudder.
Click on that shit.
Tearing it up.
You could watch that, and you could watch Creepshow. I caught up on a movie that you discussed on this podcast sometime back. It's an A24 horror movie from earlier in the year called The Hole in the Ground. It's an Irish movie, Irish horror film.
I really dug that one.
And no pun intended.
Yeah.
Well, First off, there's nothing terrible. Remember what you said about the movie. Not necessarily criticisms, but what you described it, I find generally to be true. It's not terribly original. It's not something that we've never seen before. In some ways, it's kind of formulaic, but it's easy to overlook because it's so good at doing what it sets out to do, and it's so well crafted. And even though it's not original, it's better at pulling off this concept than a lot of other movies are, that I ended up just falling for it by the end. That I was sucked into it. I thought the filmmaking was impressive. I really liked the acting. That little boy, what was his name? That little boy, James Quinn Marley, who plays Chris. Fucking creepy ass little kid. That kid gave me the chills. That might be the creepiest of the creepy kids I've ever seen in a horror movie. I gotta hand it to that little actor, because he has this really good thing that he does with his face, where he could be looking at you and you get the sense that his eyes are dead-eyed and soulless, and there's something dark and blank behind them, while giving off the front of being a presentable or a nice little kid. Yeah. You could sense something very heinous behind his eyes in the way that he reacts to things, his behavior, the facial expressions that he does. And I just, kudos to that kid. You scare the shit out of me. I would.
A pretty complex performance for a little kid.
Yeah, that's always another thing. It's always impressive to see child actors perform that well, because they don't possess the life experience to understand a lot of the emotional complexity of certain scenarios and films, and he does a good job of selling you that he's dead-eyed and soulless, and it really endears you to the mom. Her name in the movie is Sarah O'Neill. She is played by Sayana Kurslake. Okay. I apologize. I know I butcher these foreign names. I really do apologize if I don't say it right. As scary as the little kid was, I don't think the movie would have worked as well without a lead performance in the role of the protagonist to draw you in. And I felt for her through the whole time. The suspicion that she was feeling, the idea that maybe that she probably wasn't looking at her kid anymore, and just that feeling as a parent that feeling you would get as a parent when you know something is off, or when you know somebody is not your child. Really good stuff. Very compelling. Really well shot movie, and I'm surprised at how good it is, considering there's nothing original about it. It just does everything that it sets out to do so well that I want to see this director make more movies. The director's name is Lee Cronin. I believe this is his debut feature film. Oh, no, actually, I take that back. This is not his debut feature film. But I would like to see him do another horror movie like this, using the same level of craft, the same level of skill that he put in The Hole in the Ground, and applying it to a more original or innovative concept. So those are the only things that I would knock against it. It's not original. I was sucked in the whole time, and as the film went along, I felt like it got better and better at enveloping you in the story and the drama and everything that was playing out. Some efficiently creepy scenes, good cinematography, solid acting all around. I really enjoyed it. Good movie.
Really good score, too.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Good score.
It accented the visuals really well.
And, of course, A24. Kudos to them for taking chances on horror. It's available on Amazon Prime in the US. I can't speak for its availability in other countries.
Yeah.
But if you need a good late time scary movie, this is one to go with.
Listen to this podcast, or I'll gouge your eyes out.
So the next one I watched is another 2019. I have a lot to say about this. It's Godzilla, King of the Monsters, but I know it's not pure horror, so I'm going to get through it fast. But it's Godzilla. Godzilla is always synonymous with...
he's a monster. He's horror, one of the biggest movie monsters. Who's bigger, Godzilla or King Kong?
That's hard to say.
Who's had a bigger impact on popular culture?
I think it was King Kong until these last few Godzilla movies kind of putting it back in the forefront, especially bringing more monsters in with this one, which is one of the things I like the most about this. But some of the monsters were kind of silly. Just the design of them, but I don't know if that was deliberate. I don't know if they wanted to make them a little sillier looking like the old school Godzilla movies. But
is this directed by Michael Dougherty?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Well directed and co-written by Michael Dougherty. And the co-writer is Zach Shields, who wrote Krampus, so that might have been one of the problems with it.
I actually like Krampus a lot more than you did.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where I'm like, I don't think it's original, or it's not as innovative as Trick or Treat.
Yeah.
But I had a blast watching it anyway.
And then the other writer was Max Borenstein, who wrote Godzilla in 2014, which I thought was pretty good. And then Kong Skull Island in 2017, which I thought was trash. But it was stars Kyle Chandler, which is pretty good in it. Vera Farmiga was good in it, even though her character...
Vera Farmiga is always good.
Yeah, but even though her character made some ridiculous decisions. Millie Bobby Brown was really good in it. And
Millie Bobby Brown's in it?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
She showed that she could play somebody besides Eleven and be really effective. Ken Watanabe was in it again. Bradley Whitford from I always remember him from Cabin in the Woods and Get Out.
Yeah.
And Sally Hawkins was in it, but I have no idea why. She kind of pops up and she's here and there and then she's gone.
That sounds like a waste because she's such a vibrant, lively actress that brings a lot of charisma and energy to the screen. So, well, I'd have to see it for myself to see why she's in it. And
I mainly watched this because I like the Godzilla 2014 movie, and I do like Michael Dougherty. But it's weird about these two movies. A lot of people complained about Godzilla 2014, saying it wasn't enough monsters fighting, but it was too much humans. And then they say in this one that was nothing but monsters fighting, and there wasn't enough interaction with the humans. Which you can't please people. And I think the opposite. I think that Godzilla 2014 has a lot of great monster action. This one I kind of wanted a little more of that because they went a little too convoluted with the story, a little too convoluted with the characters. I kind of wanted to see the monsters more because it brought out all the monsters. It brought out, brought out King Ghidorah, the big three-headed dragon, brought out Rodan, Mothra. So it had really good monsters, but it's about all these godlike monsters are being awakened. And they're all there to defend the Earth. Some of the monsters want to destroy all humans and start over again. Some of the monsters, like Godzilla, want to save the humans and still preserve the Earth, but it's all about saving the Earth. And some of the humans, some want to control the beasts, some want to destroy them, some want to awaken them and wipe out the human race like Thanos.
Does Thanos make an appearance?
No. It starts out way too familiar is one of the problems with it. The lead character played by Kyle Chandler, he's a smart guy. See if this sounds familiar to you. Smart guy, estranged from his wife, found in a remote location so he can save said ex-wife when monsters attack or some other sort of disaster. That's happened in literally every blockbuster in history.
Yeah.
But the directing was strong enough to rise above that typical story. And it became a little atypical when Vera Farmiga becomes fucking Thanos and she's fucking insane with global warming motivations. She starts out...
Eco-terrorism?
Yeah. She starts out as the protagonist. Her daughter is Millie Bobby Brown. It has a sweet little relationship with her daughter. She's estranged from her husband. And then all of a sudden...
Is everybody estranged from their spouse in this film?
I know. And then all of a sudden when
That's how we lend them character depth. Just make them they're going through divorce.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, when things go haywire, Vera Farmiga reveals that she's this mega villain that's joined with this other mega villain to completely wake up all the monsters and destroy everybody on Earth.
Was it a believable transition, or did it just feel like it abruptly came out of nowhere?
No, it was so dumb. Like, what the hell? She's a diabolical evil person now.
Was there anything building up or hinting at that, or does it just shift that way?
Just shifts.
See, I hate when movies do that. I don't have a problem with shifting character motivations, but you have to build something into it right from the get-go that even though you might think there's a good person, there has to be a couple things there that put it in doubt to make it believable when that switch or that transition happened. It's kind of like what I would compare it to is Talia al Ghul's character in The Dark Knight Rises, played by Marion Cotillard, had one of the most unbelievable... That's the prime example of that type of thing that I don't like, where the character goes from being... like, there's nothing wrong with them, you think they're a good person, and out of nowhere that they're a villain, and then it's dressed with all kinds of exposition and backstory that was never there before, and just in an instant you're supposed to believe they're a villain now. Like, And again, I haven't seen this movie, but just from what you're describing, it does that thing I hate with those character twists.
And she remains a villain, and she's fucking diabolical through the whole movie, and Millie Bobby Brown runs away from her. And by the way, there's this big thing that's everybody's fighting over, this Orca, which it's a device that Vera Farmiga created that communicates with the monsters, so you can kind of control them that way. You can either awaken them or put them to sleep, calm them down, or whatever. So her and this other diabolical evil dude disappear for a long period of time for no apparent reason, long enough for Millie Bobby Brown to come in and take off with it. And very little happens to change Vera Farmiga's mind to not be a diabolical villain anymore. And by the end, she's the protagonist again, and she wants to sacrifice herself to fix what she just done through the whole fucking movie.
This sounds almost as ridiculous. I need to start enunciating my words better. I didn't even say enunciating right. But it's starting to sound like the ending of Jurassic World, the recent one, Fallen Kingdom, where the little girl lets all the dinosaurs loose on the world and everything just out of nowhere for some stupid ass motivation that's not believable.
That's a good comparison. It's almost as if you watched the movie, because that's just what it was like.
Okay, but is it fun though? Like, I mean, are the meat and potatoes of the movie fun? Like, is it exciting to look at?
When you turn your brain on and realize how ridiculous this is, Vera Farmiga's change.
It's more in the script than in the direction.
Yeah, but the design of Rodan was just silly looking, but it was a really good fight with Godzilla. Mothra was fucking awesome. That was the best looking monster of the thing, because it looked like a giant moth. But out of all the problems I had with it, I did have a lot of fun with it. The little monster movie nerd in me loved it. And fucking Godzilla ate one of the fucking monsters, dude. He fucking ate him whole.
Shut up.
So very, very, very cool and entertaining on the surface. But once you start looking too deep, it gets ridiculous.
Oh.
So hit and miss, Michael Dougherty, but I'm there with you.
So we're going to close off by talking about a film that is not technically a horror film, but it appeals to horror fans. It's all over bloody disgusting, and I think it's something that horror fans are going to eat up anyway. It's Joker, the movie Joker, the new DC Comics adaptation of probably the most famous villain in the history of pop culture.
Yep, directed and co-written by Todd Phillips from The Hangover.
Yes, and I just want to say, it's one of my favorite movies of the year. I fucking was really blown away by it. I don't think it's perfect. I think most of its problems lie within the script, which is a good script that's very thought-provoking.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of holes here and there that the script could have filled. But it wasn't enough for it to do any significant damage for the film to me. For one, it has gritty... beautiful and gritty. The aesthetic.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. So I take that back. It is beautiful. It's extremely well shot. Like, this movie reeks of the 1970s. So if you like movies like Taxi Driver, which is a big obvious influence on this, or The King of Comedy, which is an early 80s movies, and this takes place in 1981, it really recalls New York in the 70s and early 80s. The grittiness, the dirtiness, the big city feel, the color palette that the Lawrence Sher, who is the cinematographer for this movie, did a wonderfully retro aesthetic with the grayish green color palette that it has going on.
Yeah.
Has really good production design. It's a very interesting take on Gotham City from the comic books, because Gotham has always been described as being somewhat New York at night.
Yeah.
In the comic books anyway. This is the most New York Gotham City I've ever seen on film.
Yeah, I think so too.
And Joaquin Phoenix is fucking astonishing.
Yeah.
Wow. What a powerhouse performance. It's totally believable, the way that he plays the character. This is not a typical comic book movie, so it's harder to like group this with Marvel movies or with Avenger, or even with movies like The Dark Knight, which a lot of people would say is more atypical. That still follows more of a traditional blockbuster superhero narrative than this one does.
Yeah.
And this was because it's not about superheroes. I think it has a very interesting and timely message, and I think that's one of the reasons it's popular. I think it taps into the current rage of the era. I think it taps into our hypocrisy, our apathy. It taps into media sensationalism, which I'm pretty sure one of the reasons the media is so bent on hating this movie or destroying it, but they can't. It holds up a mirror to society, the way that the best comic books, the way that the best pieces of mythology do, and what you see in the mirror isn't ugly. So what you see in the mirror is pretty ugly. So this isn't like an escapist comic book movie. It's a movie that's a reflection of our reality, the world that we live in, and I think it really gets what it is like in 2019, even though it takes place in 1981.
It makes us look at a society that creates people like this that commit these violent acts.
A lot of people have been attacking this movie and saying that it's going to inspire people to commit violence or anything. They were saying that during the opening weekends there was going to be a shooting or something like that.
They're so sure, as if they were trying to manufacture that incident.
And I've always hated these types of arguments about art, and I fucking am frustrated that we're still talking about it like this in 2019. When we look back at a movie like, say, A Clockwork Orange from 1971, when we look back at how people reacted to it with shock and indignation, how it was going to do this or that, and from what I understand, it did inspire a few copycat crimes, but that's just because people are already sick. It doesn't mean that without A Clockwork Orange, this never would have happened. It just gave them an extra gimmick. That's not something that you can blame on a movie. It's just a very accurate depiction of society in 2019, and I think it makes people uncomfortable that the Joker is a sympathetic character in this movie. You understand his pain, you understand what he's going through, you sympathize and empathize with him up to a point.
But what exactly is wrong with showing that side of these people? What's wrong with humanizing them and seeing what motivated them to do what they do?
There's nothing wrong with it, and I think that's what people are having a problem with, is that most entertainment these days is cookie cutter. People want to be told who the bad guys are. They want to be told who the good guys are. Yeah. They want simple films that are very black and white with their morals, and real life isn't actually like that. Real life is actually a lot more complex than people would care to admit. Yeah. So while the Joker is not a good person, and he's even rotten and toxic and despicable by the end of it, his trajectory to become the Joker is believable in a way that you can understand how somebody could turn out to be like this based on the way that society works, what it's like to live under poverty, what it's like to live with mental illness and not have sympathy from other people, what it's like to try to get help and having your government programs being gutted and cut in favor of wealthy, rich people. And that's another thing that this movie taps into. I think it kind of taps into the rage of our era at wealthy elites looking down on the rest of society. And I think there's something a little bit relatable about Joker in all of us. I think everybody could relate to it. A lot of the media wants to call this like a incel movie or an instruction manual for mass shooters, and I don't think that's bullshit.
That's dumb.
That's fucking stupid, and if you think that, you're an idiot. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I view it more as a learning tool, so we can help to better understand how society creates people like this, how this could happen with the right set of circumstances, with the ruthless form of capitalism that we have, which I hate to get too political, but it's very buried within the movie.
And also to pay attention to people who are in trouble.
Yes.
And pay attention to people who are being abused and stand up and do something about it. Defend people.
Because I've known people who are mentally ill that say the same things that Arthur Fleck, who is the version of the Joker, and they say, where they just don't want to feel bad anymore, they want their medications pumped up. Or one of the most revealing things in the movie is there's a part where he's writing in his journal where he says the worst thing about having a mental illness is that people expect you to behave as if you don't have a mental illness. And I think that we as a society could be a little bit cruel to people who we don't understand.
Yeah.
And I've even been guilty of it in some cases where I have to admit my own flaws, where sometimes you might see a person and you know that they're sick and you know that there's something wrong with them, and you start judging them, or you go, oh, they're creepy, they're weird, but you don't know what that person's going through. You don't know the pain that they feel. You fail to take into account, even though you should know better, that a lot of what they're going through is beyond their control.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good movie that can teach compassion to people so we don't end up with more people like this in our society.
Well, like Demi Moore said this week on an interview with Howard Stern, people aren't born like that. People are born innocent souls just like everyone else, little innocent babies who don't have an evil bone in their bodies, and they're taught that evil, and that evil is pressed upon them, and then it depends on just how they react to that evil.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. And it's interesting, it's set in 1981, and the aesthetic of the movie recalls a different era of cinema, but the themes could not be more now in this day and age. And it's funny that the media is going so crazy over it, because I feel like this movie has a built-in critique of how media works.
It does.
And it actually holds up a mirror to media and says, look what you fucking create, look what you do. Stuff like this is your fault. And what's funny is they ended up playing into the movie's social commentary. Because there's a very shocking scene in the movie I'm not going to spoil, but when one character is annihilated, it becomes big media news. And you see there's a scene where you see a bunch of televisions in a store going off, and you see a nonstop cycle of terror, violence, get your Sprite, get this, get that. Just cycling sensationalism with commercialism and just profiting off of it while pretending under the guise of, oh, we care about society and everything. No, most media does not care about society. They care about sensationalizing crimes for profit. And this movie calls out the hypocrisy of the media and shoves it in their face. And I think that's why they're having such a vicious reaction to this film.
Yeah.
I think years from now, people are going to look back on this in the same way they look back on A Clockwork Orange, in a movie that really tapped into the rage of the era that people overreacted to. And I think the people who are, I'm not saying everybody who's a critic of this movie is going to be laughed at in the future, but the people pushing this narrative that it's creating violence or it's a dangerous movie are going to look stupid in the decades to come.
Yeah, they are.
They're going to look really foolish.
And the reaction of a lot of these people who were so sure that there were going to be shootings in theaters and everything.
And what makes it worse is some people seem like they wanted there to be shootings in theaters.
Exactly,
they were upset that it didn't happen. Where I see some articles on IndieWire where they say this movie may not have caused a shooting, but it's going to do very real damage. Somebody's like, it's not enough for you that didn't happen. It almost feels like if it happened, these people would have felt vindicated and happy, so they could fucking wave their fingers, wag their fingers with their fucking hypocritical morals and say, see, I told you so, I told you so. And this movie points out how people do it. It has a critique of not just media, but late night talk show hosts who bring, and you've seen it before. We've seen it on Jimmy Kimmel. We've seen it on different things where a talk show host will play a clip of somebody who humiliated themselves and embarrassed themselves, and they'll invite them on the show for the purpose of humiliating them or embarrassing them in front of the audience or asking them uncomfortable questions. And I always thought that was a really fucked up form of entertainment to begin with, that you don't know what these people are going through, so you put these people, regardless of what you know about their personal lives or what you know of their personal struggles, you put them on a platform in front of everybody and you use it to mock them and degrade them and humiliate them.
Yeah.
So it's a movie about how society can fail a person on every level, whether it's the media, whether it's our institutions that are supposed to protect us, whether it's poverty, untreated mental illness, the way that people ignore warning signs, a lack of compassion.
Yeah.
All very relevant, and I think it's a movie that speaks for us all. It's not something that speaks for incels.
Well,
it's not something that speaks for mass shooters.
I heard Jimmy Kimmel, the talk show host, talk about this, and he was really uncomfortable with the end. And he actually, to the point of having a problem with it because of what happens to the talk show host.
But you know what? He does the same things, and he might not like it because it shows how shitty what he's doing is.
That's what I'm trying to say. He said that he recognizes how realistic it is, and that's one of the reasons why he ultimately had a problem with it, because he's seen the result of this realistic acting talk show host and what happened to him in the end.
I don't know what else to say about Joaquin Phoenix's performance. I thought Heath Ledger had like the last word on the Joker.
Yeah.
And this proved me wrong that I wouldn't say it's better than Heath Ledger. It's something totally different, that it's not even comparable to Heath Ledger's performance. I almost feel like comparing the two is almost pointless or a waste of time because the performances are so radically different in what they hope to achieve and what their effect is supposed to be.
Well, I would go so far as to say that it's a flawless performance by him. And I even go so far as to say it's flawless filmmaking. The cinematography, the acting, and the shots chosen and everything.
The way it flows.
Yeah, but the filmmaking and the acting is so flawless. I think it calls attention to the script being weak in comparison. Mm-hmm. Not a weak script,
just really, weak in comparison. So
really
I definitely could see that.
Really strong script, but in comparison to the filmmaking and that performance that just pulls you in. But that's the thing. Because of the script, I think we're on the outside looking in to Arthur Fleck's life.
So that might be intentional.
Yeah, I wanted to be more into his struggle, and his performance brought me into his struggle, but not the directing.
Because what's interesting is I think the script is more concerned with making a statement about the Joker as a person and how it's reflective of society than it is about Arthur Fleck himself. Joaquin Phoenix is what draws you in. So I actually think it's a very good script, but I do see what you mean in regards to that. But it's a strong script that could have been a little bit better, backed by a fantastic performance, fantastic directing, fantastic set design, cinematography, editing, musical choices, soundtrack, scenes, that it's not enough for me to do that much damage to it. I still think it's top-notch filmmaking.
Well, because of the comparisons to Taxi Driver, even some people saying it's on par with Taxi Driver, maybe even better.
Few movies are on par with Taxi Driver. Yeah. Let's get that out of the way.
So that forces me to look at it a little closer and see where it failed, but there's not much that this didn't fail at anything, really. It's just a couple minor problems I had with it. Well, like I told you before, the characterization of Arthur Fleck as being ignorant, where he comes off as ignorant and naive to me, but
I could see that.
The more I think about it, maybe he just started the movement, and he's not actually the Joker that ultimately fights Batman and becomes this mega intelligent mega villain that Batman can't do anything with.
See, I see intelligence behind him, but it's an untapped intelligence where I could see where he seems like he might come across a little bit dumb, but I could tell there's something very special inside of him, which is another thing that's really sad. And at a certain point in this movie, he finally gets off of his medications. And even though, and that's another, some purists are not going to like that, this is not the full-blown Joker that could go toe-to-toe with Batman as an equal and arch nemesis. But I could see this version of the Joker getting there at some point.
Yeah.
I could see that he could eventually would become a formidable foe for someone like Batman.
Yeah, it's not a critique from me. It's just I wanted him to be smarter, but it does make sense that he's not as smart, and he does show some signs of intelligence once he gets more confidence and gets off his meds. He does,
and you get to see a looseness of him. That's one thing that impressed me, is that Joaquin Phoenix's performance feels uniform, but for a while he's not playing the Joker. He's just playing a very troubled, disturbed individual, and by the end, when he finally puts the costume on, I bought him as the Joker. He has the voice down. He has the craziness in his eyes. And he has the best physicality of anybody who's ever played the Joker. I've always liked the way that the Joker is drawn in comic books sometimes as this very gaunt figure where his shoulder blades protrude and almost kind of bony and spidery. That's how I describe him. And that makes him creepier. And that's why I think the Joker appeals to horror fans, is that if there's any comic book villain that crosses into what the horror genre, it would be that specific character.
Yeah, definitely.
But every time Joaquin Phoenix took his shirt off, his body looked like it was coiled razor wire ready to break through his skin. The way that his bones
sharp
protrude.
Shoulder bones. Oh god.
Oh my god.
It looked almost fake.
But it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's what was scary about it. But it makes his clothes hang off of him in a certain way when he puts it on, where he looks a little bit lanky and spidery. That's the closest I've ever seen to an actor getting the physicality of what I imagine the Joker to be like in the comic book. So that's just dedication right there.
Yeah.
I feel like there's layers upon layers of the performance, and I love that you feel sympathy for him and you feel empathy for him. And then when he goes batshit, you're kind of terrified of him and you're scared of him and you don't feel empathy, but you still understand why he arrived at what he arrived at, even if you don't approve of it. And the thing is, I don't think this movie condones violence or anything like that. It just asks you to look at it in a more objective way. Like you said earlier, not everybody is born violent. Yeah. Most people are not born that way. People become that way through a confluence of different factors, and I think this movie does a fantastic job of showing how that happens. There could have been some better, more liveliness with the side performances, but I did like Robert De Niro a lot as Murray Franklin, who's kind of like,
he was really good.
Kind of a riff on his character Rupert Pumpkin, taken from the King of Comedy, taken a different direction. I liked Zazie Beetz in it.
She's always good.
Frances Conroy was efficiently creepy. American Horror Story veteran, efficiently creepy as the Joker's mom.
Yeah.
And Brett Cullen as Thomas Wayne. That was another interesting aspect, and that's going to be controversial, is Thomas Wayne, who, if you're familiar with DC lore, is the father of Bruce Wayne before he becomes Batman. He's portrayed as almost a Trumpian figure in this movie, as a rich, out-of-touch, elite, blustery asshole.
Who blatantly looks down on the lower class.
Who blatantly looks down on the lower class, trashes them, and is convinced that he alone is the only person that could lift them out of poverty or save him. And he's running for mayor. And his comments where he calls people clowns, anybody who didn't make something out of their life like he did, he looks down on and calls them a clown. And that's an interesting take on the Thomas Wayne character, because so often, like in Batman Begins, like a Christopher Nolan's take on Thomas Wayne, he was a fucking saint.
Yeah.
It's like a perfect human. There's nothing wrong with portraying that works, but I think this portrayal is really interesting, and ultimately I don't feel it affects the origin of Batman at all, whether his dad was a good guy or an asshole, because the trauma is going to be there. Yeah. Whether your dad was a good person or not, that doesn't mean you deserve to see him gunned down in front of you, or that's not going to leave some traumatic scars on you. So that's something that might piss off some purists. But overall, one of my favorite movies of the year, strong performance at its core. I think it speaks to now, and I think it's popular because it's tapping into something. And the outrage and all the faux outrage that this movie is causing is exposing how hypocritical media is, and how they pretend like they actually care, but they don't give a shit. And I think this movie just shoves that in their face and shows how ugly society actually is. So it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. This taps into something that goes beyond comic book escapism.
Meanwhile, it's becoming the highest grossing R-rated film in history.
You know what's funny? I think a lot of these people who are trying to, like, a lot of the media wanted this movie to fail and destroy it. All this controversy did was boost its popularity, because when you label a film as being dangerous or having a message that's not good for society, people want to check it out more. When anybody says a movie's dangerous, I'm more likely to check it out after that. And regardless, even if nobody called it dangerous, I'm still going to watch this either way.
Well, because of the mega success, they're of course talking about Joker 2, so are you interested in seeing the continuation of the story, as long as they keep that director?
I mean, we'll see as it goes along. The only reason I'm not sure yet is because I feel what this movie did was so special and so unique, especially within the comic book genre, and I feel like it transcends that. It transcends what a comic book movie is capable of or what it could do. That I don't know if I want to see it franchised in series, even though it is connected to an IP and it is a franchise film. I wouldn't want them to cheapen what makes this movie special. However, I mean, you could possibly do a good job. So I'm on the fence. If they do it right, then I'm there. I just don't want them to mess up what is a great original piece of cinema now.
Continuation of this character and the evolution of this character through Joaquin Phoenix, it would be fascinating.
I mean, it would be. If they did make a sequel, Joaquin Phoenix is going to own the role again, and he'll be able to explore different facets of the Joker's personality. He'll be able to explore Joker as a much more developed, more cunning person who's built up his evil and his hatred more over time.
Yeah, they're saying this one's going to concentrate on him building his crime syndicate.
More of his rise to the top.
Yeah.
But I think as an origin story, just as it is right now, it's an excellent standalone film. Really well done on every level. I loved it. One of my favorite movies of the year. Small flaws and all. I thought it was fantastic.
Excellent movie.
And really quick, we barely touched on the horror elements before we stop. It is violent, but it's not overly violent. And I've seen movies that are much more brutal and disturbing than this. I think what's upsetting people about this movie is the violence is realistic and hard-hitting and kind of abrupt.
It has emotional weight to it, too.
Yeah. And when the violence happens in this movie, it feels kind of surreal and real at the same time. Because when violence happens in real life and it breaks out of nowhere, it's shocking and it leaves you dazed.
Yeah, did that just happen?
Yeah, did that just happen where your head's spinning? Most of the acts of violence in this movie leave you like, oh shit, did they really just happen? Where you question for a second if that actually happened, and you process, oh wait, it did actually happen, almost the way that violence happens in real life. So it's not there's far more violent films in this one, far more gory.
Yeah.
I think it's just that the way the violence plays out hits a little too close to home for some people. And there's one particular scene involving scissors that's really fucking brutal.
Yeah.
The Joker with a pair of scissors, and it's really fucking brutal. And I've seen it. I've seen this movie 3 times now with a packed audience. I went with different people, and every time everybody in the audience has a visceral reaction to that. I'm like, fuck, or oh, like you could hear it echoing throughout the audience. So the violence is not gratuitous at all. It's very well placed, and it serves its purpose, but it's more hard hitting than other films that are much more graphic than this.
Yeah.
So overall, check out The Joker. We know it's not horror, but there's things about it that are certainly horrifying, and we think you'll like it.
Yeah, we both really liked it.
Yes, excellent movie.
Did not disappoint either.
So, that's all for this week.
Yeah, so don't forget to watch our variety show, Pickle's Horror Show, on American Horrors every Friday night, 6:30-ish p.m. Pacific Time and 8:30-ish p.m.
Central.
Ugh,
You're going to have to translate. Yeah,
I get mixed up.
I always get mixed up. However that translates to wherever you are.
Yeah,
I wish we had a map where we could lay out, it's this time in this country, it's this time in this, but just translate and you'll get the show time.
Like we said, we are going to take 2 or 3 weeks off after our Halloween special, but we will be back toward the end of the year. So every Friday on American Horrors is our variety show, and every Saturday is our podcast. So check out both of them because we're working our asses off bringing them to you.
Till next week, happy horror.
Happy horror, everyone.